good evening to everyone. We already have our chat hopping in pretty good shape. That is always exciting to see. Um, and lots of new people, which is even more exciting to see. The herd is growing, not just on my homestead. We did officially break 400 subscribers, which is very tiny for most people, but was very exciting for me. We're now working on trying to hit the first 1,000 views for a year, so we need 127 hours worth of view time before the end of the month in order to make that. So hopefully this will help us out, and I'm excited to see all of you here. We're going to do some intros. Once again, just reminders to people who may not know. Number one, this is not my usual studio, so fingers crossed we have no technical difficulties. And number two, I do still have bronchitis, so I'm going to possibly shoot my mouth off a little bit less than usual. So, but let's get us into some introductions. Blaze, if you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Blaze Reason, and I've been playing tabletop RPGs for 7 years. Hasn't been that long, I admit, but I've been rather busy in that during that time. I started off like many with D&D 5th edition, but after a year, I realized this game is crap, and so I started working on my own game, Ishanakon World Shapers, the probably biggest free indie tabletop RPG out there with over 2,000 character options. I'm not going to say too much about that right now since it's just an introduction.
How long?
Oh yeah, I'm software developer by day.
How long have you been gaming?
Tabletop RPGs, 7 years. Gaming in general, yeah, pretty much since I was a kid.
All right. Grim Jim, welcome back to the channel. Excited to have you, and now that I know you actually do your own stuff, as well as being excited about the fact that you knew Middle-earth role-playing, I'm interested to hear more about what you're working on. So for those that missed you the first time, if you want to just tell everyone a little bit about you.
I've been role-playing for over 40 years. I have been a professional RPG designer for over 25 years. I've freelanced for a whole bunch of different companies: Wizards of the Coast, Steve Jackson Games, Mongoose Publishing, Cubicle 7 Entertainment, and others, other bits and pieces here and there. These days, mostly I publish my own stuff, and I am full-time. So.
Yeah, when Grim and I talk about how long we've been gaming, we should just go with, yeah, we're really old.
Yes, hence the grey.
All right. And Stefan, if you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Stefan Yamshi. I use the handle Dr. Noodle for my online games. I've been playing tabletop RPGs almost as long as Grim, going on 40 years. And I'm here to talk today about Delta Green, and I've been playing that one for close to 30, going on 30. I think you can fudge when you're 28. You can fudge it to 30, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
Oh, so poor Blaze is surrounded by all of us old fogies.
Yeah. Yeah. You're only as old as you feel. That's what they say.
Don't worry.
Well, that's...
sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, I was just going to say that is much nicer than the version I've heard. So, the version I've heard is you are only as old as the woman you're sleeping with. Okay, so I just want to say a quick hello to the chat. We have some new people. We have Action Tactics Role-Playing Gaming. He will be on the show in... I can't remember if it's next week or the week after without looking at all my paperwork. I've been booking for next month, so I have an awful lot of dates and people in my head right now, but it is very exciting to see you here. Inevitably impossibilities. That is a mouthful. I am glad I did not try and say that too quickly. And I am feeling a little bit better. I finally managed to get 8 hours of sleep last night without coughing up a lung in between. So sleep always helps. And we have Theta. Same answer. Very nice to see you. Also a first timer here. Blaze is also hanging out in the chat, as was I. Eraserhead is our super mod. He of the magical fingers that manages to find every link so that everyone knows. We have Stephen Graham, welcome, also a first timer. Lavistro, Lick Streams. That just brings up so many questions. I'm interested to see how that goes in the chat as we go. The big ship is already starting trouble. As expected. Debeast, welcome. I'm trying to remember if you've ever actually managed to make it before. I'm very happy to have you here. Yes, the ill goat is still streaming. Thank you for coming, Grandpappy. Lord Toxic. I'm not sure. I don't know a whole lot about Machinations of the Space Princess, but I do suspect that you might be in luck on that, Lord Toxic. And Rachel is here. Yes, there are babies. Okay. So again, very happy to have everyone here. We're not going to distract anyone, so we'll do away with the little ones for a little while. Blaze, you're going to tell us about your game that you've created, and take it away.
Yeah, glad to do that. So yes, Ishanakon World Shapers. Like I already said, probably biggest free indie tabletop RPG out there with over 2,000 character options. My goal was to create a game that, when it comes to choices, can keep up with the big guys, but still has a low barrier of entry, especially price-wise. So you can find the entire system on my website, world-shapers.com. It's also mostly under the Commons Creative license. So if you want to pick that up and do whatever you want with that, you only have to credit me, that's all. And why did I do that? Because of the OGL scandal with Wizards of the Coast. You will see that many of my decisions when working on this game was because of D&D 5th edition, Wizards of the Coast, and what I did not like about them. Sorry, Grim.
I only freelanced, it's fine.
But yeah, that's overpriced products. I offer it for free. OGL, Scandal, Commons Creative license. And also many of the designs, it's a D20 system. And you will recognize many mechanics from classic D20 systems. But I did approach it when designing this game it was less about reinventing the wheel and more about perfecting the wheel. I mean, okay, that sounds a bit arrogant, but basically seeing what worked and did not work in old systems and refining the problems away, basically. For example, making sure that all stats are balanced, unlike the ability scores where dexterity is better than strength, wisdom is better than intelligence, and so on. And making sure that martial characters stay interesting by giving all of them interesting battle maneuvers and so on. The system itself is setting agnostic. You can build pretty much any sort of character you want with it. The character creation is the core of the system. And because I know there are a lot of options, I also added tags, beginner tags, core tags, complexity levels, and role tags, so that you don't have to look through all the 900 abilities to find what you need. And if you want to keep it simple, you can keep it simple. As I like to call it, it's a game about optional complexity. if you want to build a character that does nothing other than I bonk the enemy, that's my turn. Then next time, I bonk the enemy, that's my turn. You can do that. But if you want to make a super complex, hyper combo, shooting 4 abilities per turn type of character, that's also possible. I'm just seeing the chat, more old ones, more madness chanting. There is also madness mechanic if you want to go a bit into more the cosmic horror direction. There are actually alternative leveling up rules so that you can adjust the tone of your story. The default is powerful heroes, but not like uber powerful like in D&D 5th edition. Then there is mortal heroes. If you really want to feel vulnerable, that's great for grimdark settings. Then there is only human, which if you truly just want to play a normal human without any special abilities. Maybe I should go back to character creation, what makes it special. There are 10 archetypes with currently 16 sub-archetypes each, so 160. But I'm working on a big patch with 40 new sub-archetypes currently. It should come out at the end of the month. And that basically gives you the skeleton of your character, but that's just one of the choices. There are talents, less and greater talents, which help you, give you all sorts of different bonuses, allowing you to really diversify the type of character you build, including taking features from other sub-archetypes and archetypes. So you can mix and match whatever you can imagine. And if you want to go really crazy, they are traits. Traits can be positive and negative. You need the GM's permission to use them, because if you're using them purely as a power gaming tool, you can absolutely break the game with those. But as a role-playing tool, it's very valuable, and you can truly build anything. You're not restricted to a basic humanoid. You can play all sorts of characters. There are over 200 traits and so on. Yeah. Mechanic-wise, I would say the best mechanic of the entire system is the cinematic action. The thing is, with this system, I wanted to combine the narrative with the mechanical side of the game, both helping each other out, in the sense that the mechanics of the narratives, because you have so many options that you can truly make the character the way you want them to make it. You don't have to make compromises, or at least far fewer than in other systems. And on the other side, the narrative boosts the mechanical in the form of cinematic action. It's basically the rule of cool in the system, written into the system. If you want to do something that your character sheet does not allow you to do, you can use a limited resource called narrative momentum and say, hey, game master, I want to attempt this cool thing. And if it's not too ridiculous, the game master tells you one skill check you have to roll. And if you roll high enough, you can just do it. And that's really, you can get really creative with it. The cinematic actions are also designed to be very powerful. And it really blows open the options you have while playing the game, because you're not restricted by a character sheet. And even if you run out of narrative momentum, you can get more back in exchange for exhaustion if you really want to push yourself, and so on. I didn't look at the time. How much more can I talk?
You have a question in the chat. Is this a classless system?
It's.
I mean, none of us have any class, so.
It has archetypes, which are technically classes, but they are way more loose than normal class systems. And you can really start picking stuff from other archetypes and other sub-archetypes, so you're not very limited. But there is actually the freestyle leveling rule system if you don't want any hand-holding, and that allows you to play truly classless if you want to. and you can play that side by side with a normal archetype type character. The archetypes and the sub archetypes are more there to especially give newer players a bit of a core where they can work from. Because if you give a completely classless system to a beginner player, they're usually lost and they don't know where to begin. Well, if you at least give them some form of structure in the form of the archetypes, then they can imagine, okay, like this is what my character is supposed to do, and then start picking other features based on that. Yes, I think that answered that question.
Yes, and the general consensus seems to be you don't need class if you have booze.
I mean, I don't drink alcohol, but hey, you do you.
All for me.
So yeah, what was I talking about before the question came? Cinematic actions and.
You asked me how much more time you had, and the answer
yeah, right.
was,
How much more
you've
time
got
do
a
I
few. You've got a few more minutes, unless I see a whole lot of questions start coming in. So,
so yeah. What
you
makes
do
my,
have you do have another question. Can you be a wizard and still use a sword? I never liked that restriction.
Yes, indeed. The weapons are they are weapon categories, and usually archetypes only have access to some of the weapon archetypes. So if you want a sword, you would need a medieval category of weapons. Of course, if you don't mind if it's a flaming sword, you can also use tech weapons, which can also be magical. It's just I had to use one word and have a fire sword as a wizard, but it's easy enough to get the proficiency. For example, if you take the mental archetype as your basis, which is the closest thing to a wizard, the archetypes are purposefully more flavorless, so that you can impose your flavors on the archetype. That's generally how I designed all the sub-archetypes and features also. But if you start with a mental archetype, you can take the lesser talent fighter affinity, for example, which reduces your willpower, increases your vitality, and you get access to 2 weapon category proficiencies of your choice in armor. Easy peasy. Now you can wield a sword without any problems. Or there's a lesser talent which just gives you all the weapon proficiencies. You can pick one of the many hybrid types of classes that pushes more castle-like characters into more of a martial direction. Those give you 2 weapon proficiencies. Again, you can take medieval. So it's easy enough. If you want the proficiency, you get the proficiency. And if the normal mental archetype is too restricted for your taste, just use freestyle, and then you can pick the medieval proficiency, weapon proficiency, no matter what other features you have. Can you be drugged up armorless map?
I think what they really would like to know is, can you break the game?
Oh, definitely. I have some players that just keep breaking the game. But since I treat it more like a software than a book, I can actually patch out exploits that are too severe. That's also how I keep adding new features. I have monthly updates, bringing new abilities, new talents, and so on. And there are definitely multiple ways to play that armorless madman. First of all, it is viable to just fight in your clothes, even as a martial character. There's the divide between evasion and armor. Evasion means how hard you are to hit. Armor means how much damage you can negate. So heavy armor leans more into armor, while light armor and clothes lean into evasion. So you can go the dodge tank route. And there's, for example, of course, the Drunken Master, which is probably the easiest way to get that feeling. The Drunken Master is built around giving yourself status effects and gaining benefits from those status effects. So you could go, the classic route is using Tainted, which is gives you disadvantage on everything. If you're drunk, you're tainted, and that boosts your evasion. And now you're an incredible dodge tank, which just has difficulty hitting the enemy since you get disadvantage on your attacks. And you can combine that. You can, for example, with the Drunken Master, also just put yourself on fire, be a burning lunatic, and deal extra fire damage with your attacks. I'm so going in as a half-naked madman, hyped up on.
You already have many people plotting out their insanity for this game.
With the new patch, there's actually coming the Broom Master, which is a caster version of the Drunken Master. So if you want to be the drugged up wizard, you can do that with the next patch. Or get creative with the current sub-archetypes. You can also multi-class into Drunken Master if you have something like Evoker or Arcanist or something, and get all those benefits from all those status effects of being drugged up.
And this game is free currently, right? Downloaded off the website.
Yes, it is completely free. It is planned to stay completely free. All future tools and add-ons are planned to stay free. And there's also one adventure, a beginner one-shot there. I plan to add more of those. I also plan to add... There are 2 settings which are a bit bare bone currently, I have to admit. I plan to add 4 in total. There are a lot of future plans, and all of it is planned to be free. 100%, no ads. The website doesn't even use cookies, so I cannot sell you data or something.
Oh wow! Finding a website that doesn't have cookies these days is next to impossible.
Yeah.
I don't think she's currently here. We did have somebody several weeks ago who asked about whether or not it was possible to get into this hobby affordably, and I think at the time we had all very expensive games that happened to be on that day. So it's too bad she's not here today. It would have been
Yeah, that's
would have been great for her
definitely
to know this.
was definitely one of my goals. With D&D 5th edition, everybody hears of that, and it's so expensive. And after spending hundreds of euros on that, I kind of felt scammed after realizing how bad the game really is. And I want people not to experience that, having to pay lots of money just to play this wonderful hobby. So the barrier of entry is as low as I can possibly do it money-wise. I mostly just pay everything out of my own pocket. There is a Ko-fi where you can get membership with a few perks, and I do sell merch like this cap here, but I don't rely on it. It would be nice, and if it's actually start to get a lot of money, I could probably expand the whole operation, get even more art and so on, but I'm not doing it because for the money, and I don't need your money. I just want you to enjoy the game.
So I know like Drive-Thru has like a pay what you want setting. Is it possible for your website to have a place for people to make donations if they want to support what you're doing?
Actually, if you go to the main page, there is in the bottom left corner support me, so they can directly go to Ko-fi and give me one-time donations if they want to. But
I've always wondered how much do you actually get from that? I've heard they're better than most of those plans as far as making sure you get a reasonable amount of it.
Yeah, I do get more, definitely than in Patreon, for example, but they do take a cut. Actually, Ko-fi has an option where you actually get all the money, but then you don't get access to all the features. So I think Ko-fi takes like 10%, and then PayPal takes another 10% or something.
So it doesn't directly go through. That's a shame. That's a shame. You had another question. Looking at the website, I see a stat called narrative momentum. It is affected by the rest. I'm unfamiliar. Can you explain? I think you started to earlier, but I think maybe they missed some of it.
Yes, narrative momentum. The main reason to use it is for cinematic actions, which I already explained. Which is, if you want to do something that your character sheet technically does not allow, you can still do it. You just need to roll one skill check to see it. Of course, with limitations. The game master can say, no, you cannot use a cinematic action to jump to the moon or something like that, right? But most players are reasonable enough, and you can have very cool moments, game-changing things. And cinematic actions are designed to be powerful options, even strategic ones, because what if you meet an enemy where you don't have any countermeasures to their main defense or something? Cinematic actions allow you to circumvent that. For example, I've seen it multiple times where an enemy was wearing had a lot of armor and the players were barely dealing any damage, and then the solution was, let's use a cinematic action to rip off that armor so he has less armor and the enemy became more vulnerable and stuff like that. You can also use narrative momentum to re-roll dice, and with that, any dice, your dice, your allies' dice, your enemy dice, and then decide what result to take. So it kind of represents your protagonist energy in a sense, you know, if you want to do cool stuff.
So
Or
it's
if
sort of
you,
like it's your in-game plot armor.
yes.
Okay.
And there are ways to increase your narrative momentum. Each stat gives you some sort of valuable bonus, and charisma gives you narrative momentum. And also, if you increase your luck skill, you can increase your narrative momentum. And there are actually sub-archetypes that specialize in cinematic actions. The most extreme one is the protagonist, which it goes full into the cinematic action, giving you advantage on the skill checks, making them cheaper for you, and so on. So if you want to play a character more like one in a rules-like system and just spam cinematic actions every turn, you can do that. I've actually have one of my players play such a character. There are also other sub-archetypes. One of my favorites, for example, the hero, which is all about becoming more powerful the worse the odds are, and he can get free cinematic reactions when his allies' vitality drop below half, you know, turning the tide of battle when it starts to get grim, and so on.
So the person that can spam the cinematic actions over and over again, they're like an 80s action star then? Never-ending bullets, can jump off high buildings, can...
Definitely.
Grandpappy
can
wants
also-
to know what you can play race-wise. Or species-wise, depending on your perspective.
The base system actually does not have any races, species, backgrounds, or whatever you want to call them. It's really gives you the tools to, you know, if you're playing a dwarf, take the features that make you hardy. If you're playing an elf, take the features that make you more evasive, more intelligence, and so on. And thanks to the trait system, you can really build very exotic player characters. You can change your species. You can change the number of limbs you have. You can change the senses you have. There are even some extreme examples like becoming immortal and stuff like that. The stronger the trait, the more negative traits you have to take to compensate for them. But yes, you can break the game with traits, but again, that's why you need the game master's permission. But if you really want that feeling of I am picking a species, or however you call it, there is an alternative rule for backgrounds where you get free trait points for free, and you can build your own background species and so on. And there are some example backgrounds on the website. All of the classic fantasy races, for example, also some more mundane backgrounds, modern backgrounds, sci-fi backgrounds. What you
So
can build also your own.
He's just clarifying he could play a machine.
Yes, definitely. You can play as a robot.
That's
That's
very
actually
cool.
pretty easy. Just take the creature type machine, boom, you're a machine. You probably also want to add some other things so that the flavor is correct, like poison immunity, but then you're vulnerable to shock damage, for example, and taking no maintenance, so you don't need to eat or sleep, but then maybe you take exotic diet and you need to recharge your batteries weekly. to compensate for that. But, yes.
That's pretty cool. I really like the
Mhm.
I really like the idea of that. So instead of having a specific race, you're sort of stacking on the things you need in order to make the race happen.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting idea. And I love the immortal characters, because anyone who wants to play an immortal character is a player that I am going to have a wonderfully fun time with.
Yeah, but warning, that does not make you immune to being unconscious.
Oh, absolutely. I had a player once who used to get himself killed in games on a regular basis just to mess the game up. So I gave him an immortal character, and 3 sessions in, he was paralyzed and in a wheelchair. And
Ooh.
he said, "Oh, this isn't what I meant. I want to change characters." And I was like, "Nope, you're not dead, so you can't change characters." And he's like, "But I can't do anything." And I said, "Hey, you'll heal eventually." He actually turned out to be a pretty good role player once I forced him to stop messing around and jumping off cliffs.
Yeah. There's also Phoenix Blood if you want to be revived after 24 hours. There are over 200 traits. So, and of course, that's just the additional stuff. The base game. 100. Once the patch is out, 200 sub-archetypes and over 900 abilities, which are stuff like spells, sword techniques, taking out some gizmo to work with. Then talents, there are over 300 lesser talents, over 200 greater talents, which, reminder, is a greater talent that allows you to take features from other sub-archetypes. Then item-wise, they are, I think, 200 items, but the really interesting part is the upgrade system. They are so you can even customize the items. There are positive upgrades and negative upgrades if you want a hyper specialized weapon. And again, if you're a beginner, just take the one that increases your damage and makes your weapon hit easier. But if you want to get creative, maybe it's a poison coated weapon that has a chance to poison the enemy on hit, or you can make the item sentient. You can make it burn you if the wielder doesn't follow the philosophy of the weapon, and so on. There are some very creative upgrades. Or you can just go the vanilla route, which is totally okay. Again, optional complexity.
Nice. Are there any other questions from the chat or from the other members of the panel? Anything else you'd like to know about World Shapers?
Do you have any scenarios published for your game?
Currently, there is one shot, pretty easy one, designed for beginners, and takes roughly 2 hours. There are more planned. I have one that's like half finished, but I'm just one guy, right? And that's the annoying part. I can only do so much at a time, especially since I do have a full-time job.
I was going to say, it's very impressive you got that much done on your own while working full-time.
Thank you.
Grandpappy is now torn between playing a machine plant hybrid, and a homicidal doll.
You can actually play hybrids. There is a trait called mixed ancestry where you can mix different creature types together. So,
all right. So the link to his site is in the chat. I will obviously be. I think it's currently in the description.
That's the link to the Ko-fi, not the website.
Oh, to the Ko-fi, right? Eraser,
yes,
do we have the Eraser? Can you bring up the? Oh, there we go. He's already on it.
That's the link directly to the rules, but yeah, the main website.
Excellent.
Very cool.
So.
And those will also be in the description. If they're not currently, I'll make sure they're there for the re-upload. So,
yep, they are in the description. I checked that.
I don't think the Ko-fi one is though. So I'll make sure that.
Oh yeah,
that gets in there.
Always happy about support, but again, I'm not doing this for the money. If you play it and tell your friends. That helps me more than if you give me money.
I mean, eventually it'll help more if they give you money.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't be so anti. Don't give me money.
Play it, try
know-
it, then give me money.
You know what though? I think one of the things I love about tabletop RPGs and the TTRPG community is that it's kind of still a pure hobby. You know, it's not too polluted by profiteering.
Unless
There's
you're
a lot of people
WotC.
out there just running games for free. You know, having just for the fun at the table.
Yeah, I'm still
It's-
weirded out by the idea of paid GMing. It confuses me.
Many people are.
I run 3 games a month, one of them online for people I've never met in the real world, and I can't imagine actually charging for it. If I had the time and baby season was over, I'd run more.
I have
enjoy it.
heard from people who do participate in paid games that some of them, you know, are just swear by it. They would never go back because, you know, you get players who are committed. They show up on time. They were ready to play. They don't want to, you know. And so if you're into it for those reasons, then, you know, maybe it's something
I think
you
I
could look
must.
into.
I think I must be really lucky because I don't have a problem with my players not being committed and not showing up on time anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. So,
But yeah, I hear people talking about problem players all the time, and I'm like, I'm so happy that I've been so lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true
Yeah.
though. You know, if you're paying your GM, there better be some quality. So I suppose for the players, it does make
Yeah,
certain that they're getting a GM that's good.
I think that would be reasonable to have expectations, you know, commensurate with what you're paying.
Not to toot my own horn, but I have players that drive 2 hours to play my games, so I guess that means they don't have any complaints. Which I think for Blaze and Grim might be like crossing the border into another country.
Pretty much. Unless I go
I'm not.
north.
In real life games are better. Well, that may be the other thing. There has been a joke that it's not that I'm a good gamer, it's that I feed everyone and I really like to cook. So it may be that they're actually just after my food.
Yeah, I have to agree. Even though most of my games are online, because the people I play with are all over the world, I do prefer in-person games. I'm currently running 2 campaigns, of course, with Ishanekon World Shapers. One of them is a multiverse campaign, which is pretty fun. That's where the system truly shines, when the players can mix and match whatever character concepts they can imagine. And the other one is a steampunk pirate treasure, a floating island exploration game. So, which, by the way, I also want to publish. That's that adventure. But that will be a longer campaign. But again, there's a lot of stuff I'm working on. Yeah.
There's always
Also,
time and money. Everything in life is about balancing time and money.
Oh yeah, and one thing I want to add: the website has digital character sheets actually, and a digital creature builder, and counter calculators, and a few other tools. So, I also wanted to make the game accessible for those who maybe don't have the mental capacity to carefully build their own character. The character sheet calculates a lot for them. So yeah.
Those of us with no attention span, in other words.
I mean, there's nothing wrong if you just want to have fun, but you just don't have the inclination, right? I want everybody to enjoy this wonderful hobby. No matter if you're a genius or not. I don't want to insult anybody, so I'm going to be very careful how I say this.
I agree with Action Tactics. It's honorable to have a low-cost entry system, but my hope is that as popularity grows, you get compensated so you can work on it full-time. Even if you can work on it part-time, you should still get compensated if it gets popular enough.
Yeah, I'm definitely not against being paid for your work. I fully understand if indie tabletop RPGs designers ask for money for their work, especially if they have fancy art and they have to pay their artists and so on. So,
Or even if you
but
just, even if somebody just wants it in hard copy and you've got to pay to get it printed for them.
yeah, that's also why it's online, right? I cannot afford giving everybody free hard printed copies. Also, I think the pineapple pizza rule, if I remember correctly, we're supposed to say if we like pineapple on pizza or not, right?
So I think at this point, the argument has become if you had to eat one or the other, would it be pineapple or anchovies?
Pineapple. Uh, I used to be a pineapple on pizza hater, but I never had it, and I'm somebody who wants to have logical, consistent views. And I said I cannot be an honest hater if I never tried it. Then my father ordered that pizza, and I was like, "Hey, can I try so that I can officially start hating this flavor?" And then it did taste that bad, actually. so, so I'm no longer a pineapple on pizza hater, but it's also not something I order usually. I like spinach on my pizza.
I had spinach and garlic tonight. That was my pizza this evening.
Ooh, fancy.
Well, I had this agreement with the chat that I was going to go through the entire menu of this one place I can actually eat at. And I am down to the point where the only thing I have not eaten is the blueberry and ricotta. But everything in my life tastes like cough drops right now. So I wanted something that would actually cut through the cough drop flavor. So it's like, I'm going back to the garlic just for today. We'll do the blueberry and ricotta next week, assuming I'm feeling a little better. And then after that, I'm going to start letting the chat vote on what I put for toppings on the pizza. So
Blueberry and ricotta on pizza.
yeah, there was a peaches and honey one too. That one was very strange.
I'm not even sure you can call it pizza at that point.
Well, it's like it feels like it's a dessert pizza at that point.
Yeah.
I see.
Like I need to get it with chicken wings so that the chicken wings are our supper and then the blueberry and ricotta pizza is dessert. That's what it feels like at that point.
I see somebody's asking if I have social media for World Shapers. I have a Twitter account, a Blue Sky account, and I have a YouTube channel where I try to post videos regularly. I do stream regularly on that one. I try to have a weekly design stream where I work on the system. And then I also have a monthly stream called Ishanekon Arena. Anybody who wants to join is invited as long as there's room. The idea is it's a multiversal tournament where a group of challengers from all over the multiverse have to defeat a themed challenge. It's basically just an excuse to allow the players to play whatever they want and test out their weird characters against some enemies. There's a bit of roleplay. There are two announcers. But yeah, for example, last time the theme was cartoon ponies. Then there was like an alien theme, a undead theme, mutants, and so on.
So we discovered that in the chat in general, apparently the people that like pineapple hate anchovy and the people that hate anchovies like pineapple. So this is how we've come down to the anchovy versus pineapple debate. Grim, tell us if you'd rather eat pineapple or anchovies, and then tell us about your game.
Definitely anchovies. I like pineapple independent to pizza, but definitely prefer anchovies.
Yeah, same. You'll make Eraserhead's day. He'll be so happy.
Right, so I'm here to talk about one of my games. This is Machinations of the Space Princess, which is a science fiction OSR game, old school revival, old school Renaissance game, kind of built off Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I say kind of because it is only kind of. It's nowhere near as dark. It's meant to be a game that will let you play sexy, sleazy swords and sci-fi. So the kind of stuff you might see in Heavy Metal magazine or Metal Hurlant in its original form.
Can you hold it up again? I'm gonna blow the screen up so that people can.
There
Oh,
you
that
go.
is very nice. Yeah, thank you. It's a little disorienting with the moving background though. Oops, did he freeze?
Yeah, he looks frozen to
Uh-oh.
me too.
Uh-oh. Grim, I'm going to remove you and add you back in if you can. Oh, I got movement.
Am I back?
There we go. You're back. Yes. Excellent.
Okay. Don't know what happened there. Yeah. So where was I? Oh, yeah. So it's meant for playing sort of 70s, 80s trash science fiction, B-movie science fiction, all of that kind of thing. So it's built on an old school D&D base. And yes, Lex would be a good touch point for it. Borderlands as well. You could say that's a more modern sort of influence, or the heavy metal films, Fact 2, and so on. So it's meant to be a kind of general toolkit for running these sorts of science fantasy, cheesy science fiction sort of games. That's what the real focus of it is. I admired Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which is this very dark sort of forerunner, I guess, to a lot of the grimdark settings. I admired that in that it was still very much an old school clone, but the way in which Jim Raggi, who wrote that, conveyed his ideas and his setting was very effective. So the rules might not have been that different, but the way the game was presented, the way he conveyed mood and atmosphere and set expectations in the book was really effective, I felt. So that's part of the reason I wanted to do it. Also, I'm not really much of an old school gamer. I didn't start on Dungeons and Dragons. I've always been a complete whore when it comes to game systems. You know, I have shelves upon shelves upon shelves of different games. I just devour them. I like to play all kinds of different ones. So D&D never hugely appealed to me. So it was kind of a challenge to myself to go in and design something that was on that sort of old school line. I couldn't stop myself fiddling about with it. So I bolted on a bit more of a skill system. So there's a broader range of skills. They're all quite simple in that you just roll under the score on a 6-sided dice. But I also expanded out the saves system because the whole wands, death ray, whatever from old school D&D never made much sense to me. So I gave each stat a save. So even if you fail on a skill, you can kind of recover. So if you're trying to leap across a chasm or whatever and you screw up your skill roll, you get a save to kind of just recover at the last minute. So like to grab onto the other side and then maybe you can haul yourself back up. There's no actual setting per se. It's what I call an implicit setting. So where I've done examples or created a couple of monsters or done little box outs with flavor text and so on, that's all there is of a setting. And at the bottom of every single page, there is an adventure seed or a little bit of information. So if you're out of ideas, you can just flip the book, look at the bottom, and take something from that and make an adventure from it. Character classes. Personally, I don't like classes, but I included them because you kind of have to with an old school game. But they're a lot broader. So a fighter doesn't have to just be a fighter. They can do other things because you can customize your character with their skills. And some of the skills are things like combat maneuvers and so on. One of the rules I have is that you can try any stunt or whatever in combat and you just get a flat -5 to your roll. But then if you take a skill in those maneuvers, that offsets that penalty and eventually becomes a bonus of sorts. I'm seeing a lot of people name lots of good films and TV series. So class-wise, you've got experts, which are kind of like rogues, but without assuming they're going to be criminals. Killers, which is anyone who fights and kills for a living. Scions, who have psychic powers. But you can bring magic in if you want, because you do get quite a bit of that in these sorts of source material. And scholars, which is anyone who uses their brain for a living. And then you get a bunch of skill points that let you customize things, give you training, boost your stats, all of that sort of thing. The thing that most people seem to really latch onto and love about the game is that you can literally play just about anything. If you want to play a human, humans are about the only thing in the game that is actually has a sort of set of stats and modifiers and things. But you can play anything, any alien. I wanted to encourage people to play things that weren't necessarily humanoid. So there is a huge list of traits, which is organized both as a list and as a list of traits by type. So if you wanted to play like a Varga from Traveller, you would take a canine species, and then you would pick a few traits out of that. And there are also negative traits. So if you get too many traits, you start losing statistics, starting with charisma, or the games master can say, oh, okay, well, you have to take something else. You can take something else instead that's a negative. So if you were a canine species and you took acute hearing, acute sense of smell, natural weapons, and pack mentality, which are all things that would give you bonuses, for that last one, you'd have to either drop 4 charisma points because you're not so good at interacting with other beings because you're too weird and alien, or maybe the games master would say, okay, you don't have hands, you are literally an actual dog, or one of the Tines from a Fire Upon the Deep, or something like that. So that there's that option as well. But so I wanted to create a game in which you were free to be like anything. You look at some of the background scenes in some of these classic science fiction comic books, and like there's no two species are the same in the background, and you'll see, you know, green slimy blobs hanging out with androids, hanging out with hyper intelligent shades of the color blue, or whatever else. And so you can do all of that if you want to. It's complete. It's got spaceship rules. It's got weapon rules and customization rules for those. It's got psychic powers. It has advice on games mastering, which I would characterize as practical, real world advice. I tend to write in quite a sort of conversational, no bullshit sort of style for the most part. For example, that is like an adventure plan example, because that's what they're like. It's just a cluster of ideas that you can then navigate. Careful, it'll probably get rid of me again.
I realized that immediately after clicking the button.
Yeah, and stuff about problem players and so on. I think that often there isn't enough Games Master advice in books, or a lot of it is very repetitive, or it makes assumptions that I don't think are sound. I really need to write like a separate Games Master advice book at some point. There's a planet generation set of rules. These aren't meant to produce realistic planets. They're meant to produce interesting comic book or you know, bad movie type planets. So like monocultural planets or monobiome planets, jungle world, forest world, desert world, city world. You know, it's Star Wars type stuff for the most part. So yeah, there's random stuff for all that. There is a adventure. There's a few example bad guys, but another idea I kind of took from Lamentations. Lamentations has no set monsters at all. I gave you some, but I gave pretty robust rules for creating your own. We're doing well, I don't know whether it'll be Kickstarter or Indiegogo or where, but we're doing a sort of soft relaunch of this soon with a whole campaign book going with it. I don't know when that's going to happen now because some of the background stuff fell through, so we're trying to kind of scramble to reorganize. But this was originally out in 2013, but we're reissuing it along with this campaign, and hopefully it'll be a success. So were there questions? Sorry, I wasn't particularly looking at the screen.
So Grandpappy is apparently our Can I Break the Game guy for the evening. He wants to know if he can play a giant bug monster.
Yes, you can easily play a giant bug monster. So let's see, that would be... Okay, there's a giant there, and a series of traits that go with that, like enduring, large, resilient, and strong. So you could pick from amongst those. And then we have insectoid. We have an insect lady who, for some reason, has breasts. Just go with it. After all, cockroaches give milk, so it's got to come from somewhere.
I'm a goat. I'm a goat, and so do I. So
yeah.
And Stephen Graham wants to know if he can play a hyper intelligent shade of blue.
Yes, you can.
Which I believe is a Douglas Adams reference.
Yes.
We have someone who wants to play a monkey humanoid that goes to a large gorilla form when angry.
So you might have to fudge it a bit with the changing forms, but yeah, that's definitely possible. There are simian and humanoid traits. The artwork. So this was 2013, like I said. Satine Phoenix did the artwork. At the time, she was just coming off I Hit It With My Axe and sort of transitioning out of the adult industry, and so I gave her some work on this. This was before all the various controversies. But I'm glad to say she's doing a lot better these days. So, but not really doing art anymore, which is a shame. Otherwise, I'd tap her to do some more work.
And people are very taken with your beard. There has been much conversation about your beard. Apparently, people are in awe.
Yes, my badger beard. Yes, you can pet the beard. I do oil it, so yeah. See,
Wormy Spoon wants to know if he can be a Little Shop of Horrors plant.
Yes, you can be a plant. Yeah.
I think he specifically wants to be a Little Shop of Horrors plant. Just hang out and wait for people to come by.
Well, it was an alien, wasn't it? So, yes, I get called Pound Shop Rob Zombie quite often, or Johnny Depp from Wish.com. I've been called before.
I don't recall Johnny Depp ever having a beard quite that long in any of his roles.
Mine wasn't.
He always just has.
Long.
Grim is clearly a wizard. The beard holds his power.
I do prefer the Rob Zombie comparison to be fair.
All right. Any other questions from the chat or from the panel about the Space Prince? I was wondering, did you ever play Macho Women with Guns?
Yes, and I wrote the D20 version during the D20 boom.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I only had a chance to look at this game a little bit, but what immediately came to mind was the Flame Princess and Macho Women with Guns having a baby.
Well, so in the implicit setting is that there was this enormous empire called the Erlanth Matriarchy, and it had a queen. And she did everything she could to be immortal, but she had like 100 princesses. And then she got assassinated, and the entire empire has fractured as all of these princesses start fighting each other and gathering their own armies. And the military was all male, and some of them have rebelled and tried to start like a male
beehive
liberation movement. Yeah.
It's a beehive. Okay. Doesn't look like anyone else has any questions unless I have missed something. If so, I don't know. Put weird emojis in the thing, and then I'll know that. Yeah,
I just
Stephen
have
Graham
a-
says macho women with guns in space.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I think the idea of building your own alien race is awesome. Often, when you have sci-fi games with just pre-finished aliens, it's so limiting. But just having that Star Wars or Star Trek scene with all sorts of aliens in the background, and you can pick one of those and just make it your own. I really like that.
Yeah. I really wanted to move beyond humanoid aliens as well. So I took a lot of inspiration from E. Doc Smith's Lensman series, because the aliens in that are often extremely alien. It's hard to get players into a truly alien mindset, but at least you can get the alien physicality and biology and so on.
Yeah, I always loved. I mean, I know that a lot of early Star Trek was, everyone was humanoid and just painted green. But they did occasionally try and do things like energy beings, and then Babylon 5 had like the Pakmara, where, everyone was disgusted by them because they were carrion eaters, and
The Vorlons and the Shadows.
yeah.
Tholians in Enterprise, I think they actually showed some on screen, which was interesting.
I think the concept of the game sounds a little bit like the Wild Sea, if you've ever heard of that one.
I've heard of it, but I haven't looked into it. I can't possibly cover everything. I try to. I do a lot of game reviews on my channel. But yeah, I don't earn enough from it to justify buying everything. So.
Eraserhead said he was just watching those episodes of Babylon 5 today. Because Babylon 5 is awesome.
Yeah, someone mentioned Lex earlier. Coincidentally enough, I was watching a thing about Lex earlier. So
I actually did. So I did my first underappreciated 90s series. I wanted to include Lex, but it was so weird. It ended up becoming almost as long as the rest of the video put together. And so I just made like a Lex addendum to the video and uploaded it separately. So it's just Lex. I was like, I did not want the rest of the video to get lost in this. So here is the weirdness that is Lex.
It's weird, isn't it? You get that the 90s schlock doesn't get the same appreciation as the 80s schlock. And I think it's because it's DVD and high def, kind of. Unlike the videos, you don't get the retro fuzz and everything, and also bad CGI. I don't think ages as well as bad puppets.
The thing about the 90s though is that like that's when cable was really becoming popular. The Sci-Fi Channel showed up, and channels were like just grabbing like series after series after series, and if they, it was 24 episodes for a season. So if you didn't make it through a season, you got like axed. Like there were a lot of shows that only made it one season. So shows that by today's standards would be absolutely amazing got shut down before they got halfway through a season. And so I really like to, sort of touch on those and be like, here are the shows you've never heard of. And for those of you complaining because, a television show today got shut down, keep in mind that this was shut down and it is objectively better. Yeah, I don't do Firefly Big Ship because that is not really underappreciated. I mean, people talk about it all the time. But things like Harsh Realm, like nobody's ever even heard of that show. Or Space Above and Beyond, which didn't even make it an entire season. Like great shows that just, they were in the wrong time slot, or they were like Harsh Realm was canceled because it was on at 8:00, which was considered prime time. But they thought it had too much swearing for kids. And it had too much tech for older people. Like even the people in the show did interviews talking about the fact that they didn't understand the script. But if you did it today, people would love it because everyone would understand it. It's a virtual reality show. It's great. But there's my little tangent anyway. Eraserhead is advertising himself. Shows you've never seen. Monday is on Monday. Eraserhead's one time getting out from behind the chat and actually being on stage. Okay, so it doesn't look like there are any other questions for Grim. Dr. Noodle. I'm sorry, I just love that name. That's such a great name. Anchovies or pineapple, and tell us about Delta Green.
I love both anchovies and pineapple, but pineapple has no place on pizza. I'm sorry, pineapple lovers. Yeah, so I'm gonna take a little break from the epic fantasy genre, and we're gonna talk about Delta Green, which is and also, unlike the other gentlemen on your show today, I don't have any ownership of Delta Green. You know, I didn't write this system. I'm introducing you to it because I played it a lot, and I'm familiar with it. But it's I'm always extremely impressed by people who take the time to write their own games and really work out the rules. That's an amazing effort. So congrats on, well done, you guys. Delta Green was originally published in 1997 as a supplement to Call of Cthulhu. And if you're not familiar with Call of Cthulhu, this is let's see if I can get it up here.
Nope.
The void, it consumes it.
Yeah, there we go. This is the version 6. They're on version 7 now of Call of Cthulhu. And Delta Green was originally a supplement to the Call of Cthulhu game. And it used the same percentile-based role-playing system as the Call of Cthulhu rules do. And it's called basic role-playing. It's the basis for a number of games, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. In 2016, Delta Green published a standalone edition, and I have that too. This guy, and the rules changed a little bit. It takes the basic role-playing system from Call of Cthulhu and it makes some new modifications that are kind of adapted to the set and setting. In Call of Cthulhu, of course, you're playing investigators, and the game master is called the Keeper of Arcane Lore. And in Delta Green, the players are agents, and the game master is called the Handler. So you can buy the rule system from deltagreen.com. You can also purchase it through DM's Guild, DriveThruRPG, and a bunch of others. And there's a whole bunch of published adventures for it, which is really fun. And the system can be played on a lot of virtual tabletops like Roll20, Foundry, and those sorts of things. And I want to take a moment to talk about the theme, because D&D is we're all familiar with it, is very epic fantasy. Delta Green is sci-fi horror, and I would add to the sci-fi horror action, because you have Call of Cthulhu, which is also kind of sci-fi horror. But Delta Green takes it to another level with the action element. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. It's impossible to introduce Delta Green without at least mentioning Call of Cthulhu, because that was its origin. So I'm gonna take a moment to introduce people who are unfamiliar with that. Call of Cthulhu is based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft, who was a sci-fi horror author in the 1920s, and science was viewed a little bit suspiciously, more suspiciously then than it is now. It's sort of this mysterious, sometimes ominous or taboo discipline, and the works of H.P. Lovecraft sort of play on those themes. Delta Green updates all this stuff to a modern context and attempts to evoke a lot of the same themes. There's the fear of the unknown, there's cosmic horror, and there's existential dread, there's body horror. All these themes, come out in the game. And it can be sometimes, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but it can sometimes border on the pulpy, can be funny, comedic, kind of campy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And I would say that one thing that distinguishes Delta Green from Call of Cthulhu is it's geared more towards skirmish type combat. Call of Cthulhu is a very investigation heavy game, and Delta Green is more of a combat heavy game. The agents themselves are part of an organization, and it's sort of a paramilitary organization, so it has like a military arm. A lot of times they are in the game with all kinds of small arms armaments like guns, rifles, RPGs, automatic weapons, sometimes even heavy weapons and explosives. And the combat rules do cover things like burst round weapons, and weapons do a lot of damage. And so in Call of Cthulhu, and this is the same in Delta Green, maybe even more so, combat is sort of infamously deadly. You can get into a situation where if someone makes a good enough roll against you, they can easily do more damage to you than you have total. So in Call of Cthulhu, generally your job is to run away from danger. And in Delta Green, I think one of the things is you're playing an agent. So there's a bit of a mandate on you to get in there and face it down, see it through to the end. And that's really interesting. It can create a lot of tension at the table. And I got some examples from current media that I think are kind of illustrative of Delta Green. There's the X-Files, of course. Everybody knows the X-Files. There was these agents in this FBI-like organization, and they go out and they investigate things in the modern era, and they get all kinds of weird plot lines in there, and that's really cool. I like Men in Black. Men in Black is a little bit on the future side, but you can definitely go with it. It's kind of a near future scenario is also a pretty good adaptation for Delta Green. Another movie I like a lot and that I think is reflective of Delta Green is Predator. It's probably not one you would think of a lot, but it's really got all the themes in there. It's got aliens, it's got heavy weapons, it's got badasses and tromping through the jungle. There's a 2018 movie I picked out called Overlord, which is set in World War II. Some special forces soldier invade Nazis, and they're doing dark stuff inside this space. I'll post these links in a second. There's a 2014 movie called Monsters: Dark Continent, which is the backdrop of the Afghan war. And so you've got like helicopters and big heavy weapons, and then you've got these giant Cthulhu-like monsters roaming around in the deserts, which I think is super cool. The Thing, John Carpenter's 1982 movie, I think is a great example. It could also easily be a Call of Cthulhu scenario. There's not a lot of, you don't need to be part of the Delta Green organization to be involved in that plot. You don't need weapons. It could go either way. On the funny, campy end, there's Ghostbusters. I think Ghostbusters is a terrific example of something you could play in Delta Green. And Aliens, the sequel to the original Alien 79 film, Aliens was from 1996. And those guys are like space marines, and they go to the station and face down these horrible creatures in the station. I think that would make a great Delta Green scenario too. So let me talk a little bit about the Delta Green, and actually let me put these links in chat in case anybody is interested. They may not make it through because they're URLs, but we'll see. The basic role-playing system is published by Chaosium. It's a percentile-based system, and I like to describe it as like if you were going to invent a system that was an easy way to understand and represent a character's ability to do different things in the game. One way you might do that is just assign a percentage chance to each skill. Like here, you're driving, right? You have a 20% chance of being able to do a bootlegger correctly. It's simple, it's pretty intuitive. And that's basically what the basic role-playing system is. And it is the basis of a lot of games published by Chaosium. Call of Cthulhu is one, Delta Green is one. There's also RuneQuest, Gamma World, Star Frontiers, Rollmaster, Marvel Superheroes, and a bunch of others. So if you can learn the system, which is not very hard, you can use it to play a whole bunch of games. So it's really interesting. The dice mechanics, of course, use two 10-sided dice. And by convention, one represents a tens digit, one represents the ones digit. And so it's got about an 80 or 90% overlap with Call of Cthulhu. And it's a skill-based system. And so with Delta Green, because it's in a modern setting, there's some updates to the skills. Like you have computer use, whereas in the 1920s, there wasn't any, there wasn't really a thing for computer use. You also have pilot skills, for example, in the modern day that you might not have had in the 1920s, or they were much more rare. And you can have heavy weapons and things, which are, really thematically appropriate to Delta Green. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap in terms of the combat mechanics. There's a concept of lethality. So if you get a particularly good hit roll with a weapon, it will impale your victim, is what they call it, and it does tremendous amounts of damage and can often one-shot people. There's a difference from Delta Green, from Call of Cthulhu to Delta Green. The new Delta Green system has criticals on anytime you roll a double dice that falls underneath the threshold for success. So if I had a 50% chance of success to succeed at something, I would critical on a 0-1, a 1-1, a 2-2, a 3-3, or a 4-4, right? So a 0-1, an 11, a 22, a 33, or a 44, all of which fall below the 50% threshold. They're all double-digit numbers, and those are each critical hits. And similar to Call of Cthulhu, there is also a sanity mechanic. So as you face down these terrors and horrors, your sanity has a tendency to be chipped away at until you start coming unraveled, and then you start going through bouts of madness and eventually become permanently insane. And in Call of Cthulhu, that's when you retire. In Delta Green, I'm not sure what you do. Maybe they retire you. Delta Green is a secret organization, sort of a pseudo-government organization. If you don't like the United States and Delta Green as a backdrop, there are some counterparts in other countries. There's a British counterpart called Pisces. There's a Russian counterpart called GRU SV8. And there is a Canadian counterpart to Delta Green called M-Epic. So those are also alternate versions of Delta Green that you could play with. And I guess if I really want to talk about how Delta Green, I have to talk about the style of play and how it's different from D&D and other epic fantasy. And D&D, you tend to do a lot more strategic combats. And in Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green, I think the style of play tends to be more towards the theater of the mind. And there's a little less movement around. In Delta Green, it's maybe not quite as true because there is a lot more combat. But in both systems, investigation tends to be a larger percentage of the game. And certain key scenes can be represented on the tabletop, but in large part, it is theater of the mind. So what do you need to do? What do you need to get into this? What do you need to play? Get yourself a rule book. Get yourself a set of polyhedral dice, at least one friend, and that's it. That's all you need. get going with it. I know that solo adventures have recently started gaining a lot of traction in the community. I don't know if there's a lot of solo adventures yet for Delta Green. They tend to be, more like choose your own adventure type things. Some people talk about using AI, neural networks to kind of drive the story. And I've heard stories with mixed success on that. So, but it's possible to do. So there's a lot of options out there. And that pretty much covers my intro to Delta Green. Any questions on that?
My goodness, this is the fastest we've ever gotten through 3 games.
I mean, I'm happy to fill up the rest of the time.
Well, let's find out what we got for questions on Delta Green. There definitely was a lot of chat. I get the impression that a lot of the chat are big fans of the game and have played it before.
It is a popular game. It's a popular theme.
I have played Call of. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, are you aware of the Laundry, and that has an RPG with it as well? I was just wondering if you had any points of comparison between the two.
I'm not familiar with it, so you'd have to ask somebody else to make that comparison.
Okay.
I have played Call of Cthulhu, but not Delta Green specifically.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, the people I played Call of Cthulhu with tended to make it a much lighter game than Call of Cthulhu is really intended to be, which is probably why I don't play more of it, because I like actual hardcore horror.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I don't put warning labels on my games, but if I did, they would just be like, this is a horror game. If you don't like horror, you should be here.
Yeah. I do like to just warn people at the beginning, like, oh, these themes could involve body horror, could involve, if you have anything, like you don't want to have your character drown or something because that's triggering for you, definitely let me know. I sort of say those things at the beginning and then I forget that I said them, and like well into the game, people are getting strangled and monsters are leaping at them, and I'm pulling every trick out of the bag, to try to terrify them, and there's no consent at that point. It's all just
We had Sandy Peterson on the T-Shirted Historians channel a few weeks back. Obviously, he's big in Call of Cthulhu. He originally wanted Call of Cthulhu to be a modern game. And it was Chaosium that insisted that it be set in the 1920s because they didn't think anyone would like H.P. Lovecraft. So they wanted to have the fallback of having the whole gangsters thing going.
Yeah.
But there was Cthulhu Now before Delta Green, wasn't there?
Yeah.
That was, 80 something?
Yeah. I actually, when I originally first started playing Call of Cthulhu, we had the idea, wouldn't it be cool if we could run it in the current modern day setting? That would be really neat. And we had lots of ideas on how to do that. And I think Delta Green is definitely like Cthulhu now in that it is in the modern setting and uses some of the same rules and some of the same concepts. But again, it's got this organization, this Delta Green organization as part of the theme. You're an agent of this organization. So you have some stricter parameters around your backgrounds, around what you're doing, how you get involved in the adventures. I sometimes, like with many things, limitations breed creativity.
Is Delta Green a little bit like Call of Cthulhu mixed with like Top Secret or something like that?
I would say Call of Cthulhu mixed with X-Files, or Call of Cthulhu mixed with a war movie, or, however you want to take it. I played it where you are just agents, more like detectives. And I played it like where we were literally a military, a military running around in APCs, armored personnel carriers with 50 caliber machine guns on the top, and And the
Okay, so
creatures.
it isn't. You aren't necessarily military. I say I was kind of under the impression that, from what people were saying in the chat and what you were saying, that people were necessarily Secret Service or military or something like that.
Delta Green is a paramilitary organization, so you can think of it a little bit like the Air Force, like Project Blue Book or something, or the FBI or the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms or something. So they have access to weapons. They have a limited set of backgrounds that many of them or most of them come from.
Hmm.
But it's not exactly a military organization.
So for all of our friends in Europe, this is America, and everyone has access to weapons.
Oh, I did think he meant Top Secret, the movie. Actually, Top Secret, the RPG is definitely
Yes.
is a much better comparison. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot there was a movie.
Mhm.
A great movie.
I've got my own weapon right here. But it's not really a weapon.
Yeah.
I have enough to crack a skull, though, I think.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that they were
Yeah.
mainly for, cracking ribs and all that good sort of stuff anyway. Impact weaponry.
The Fall of Delta Green. I don't know that one. Not familiar with it.
I had another question for you. What was it? I've totally forgotten. So, I mean, I understand that Delta Green is a paramilitary thing, but as far as the setting goes,
Mhm.
are you familiar with things like Cult or other kind of modern day horror?
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you kind of draw a comparison? Are there setting differences? Other than the fact that Cult, you don't have to
I
be
think
military.
in Cult, there's a more of a paranormal. There's more of an emphasis on your character being connected with the paranormal, having magic, being familiar with magic, those sorts of things. In Call of Cthulhu and also in Delta Green, you tend to be in opposition to the paranormal, and your purpose tends to be crossed with the paranormal at all times. If you delve into the realm of magic, it is likely to burn you in some way. It will take your sanity. It will take your vitality. It will, it's not a
Well,
good thing.
that's true. I suppose in Cult, losing your sanity can actually get you benefits.
Yeah, in Call of Cthulhu, there's no benefit to it. There's just insanity.
There is no seeing beyond the veil. The crazier you get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe there is, but at some point you become non-functional. So it's.
I think the same is true in Cult. It just takes a very long time. The interesting thing in Cult too is that if you get too enlightened, you become non-functional.
Mhm.
You're too like you're not really connected with humanity anymore. Sort of like in The Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan there.
Yeah,
If
in
you-
Delta Green, because of the fact that you're exposed to these things on a regular basis, you have something called bonds. And bonds are people in your life that keep you grounded. And they could take many forms. It could be your boss, could be your father, it could be your mother, it could be, anybody in your life who helps keep you grounded. So sometimes when sanity loss is piling up on you, you can push some of that off onto your bonds. It tends to deteriorate your connection with your bonds, but it can save your character.
I
There we
see we
go.
have Shub Nigrath has entered the chat.
Oh,
The dark go to the woods with 1,000 young.
yeah. Gonna be losing a lot of sanity now.
I was gonna say, there's my bonds. I mean, come on. How can you go insane with that little cute face? Cosmic
Yes.
horror plus goats.
I think it's Cult I've always characterized as being sort of Clive Barker-esque. and a lot of it's based on the Kabbalah, or at least it used to be. I haven't played the newer edition. Whereas Lovecraft stuff is his own mythos. And yeah, like Dr. Noodle was saying, in Call of Cthulhu, you're generally stamping on the horrors and the eldritch stuff, trying to keep it from getting out. While in the more sort of Barker-esque personal horror, you're becoming part of whatever is going on much more.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true. You know, the first time I heard about horror role-playing games, I wasn't sure how that could possibly work. The only game I'd ever played was D&D, you know, and I thought, well, that just sounds silly. You know, how could you scare people at the table, you know? And then I tried it, and the tension in the room was just palpable, you know, and it was late at night. I remember leaving my friend's house after a game and walking to my car, and I started, you know, like walking faster because I was just looking behind. Every shadow was like lengthening, kind of stretching out towards me. And so I literally had to run to my car, and my hand was shaking as I was trying to get the key in the ignition. And I was hooked. That was it, you know.
That is a great horror game right there.
And I years later, like 20 years later, I was running a game for some friends, a Call of Cthulhu game. And after about the fourth session, it was at the beginning of the fourth session, and one of my friends came up to me and he said, you know, after the last game, I didn't want to tell anybody this, but I had to run to my car because I was so scared. You know? And I thought, oh man, I hooked another one, you know. This guy's in for life.
Yeah, horror is now by far my favorite genre to run. I mean,
Yeah.
even games that are not, like Numenera is not traditionally a horror game. It's kind of a combination of fantasy and sci-fi, but
Yeah.
man, they make it real easy to like throw a little horror in there.
It's a wonderful medium for storytelling because you have, you know, horror stories are slow build stories. You know, you really, you never want to like take out the guy in the rubber suit too early. You always want to let people's imagination sort of play on them a little while.
Yeah.
So it's a slow burn. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say the two hardest genres to do in tabletop are horror and comedy. And the slow build, the slow burn is definitely the real key to unlocking horror at the tabletop. I think you gotta give it room to breathe and to start picking away at people to make it really work.
Yeah, the real secret is there is no creature that you could describe that is going to scare all the players at the tables. So what you have to do is let their imaginations play on them a little bit. It's the fear of the unknown. You know, it's you give hints something bad is happening, you know, and you keep ratcheting it up very, very slowly. Something's bad is happening and it's focused on us. You know, it's getting closer now. We see what it's capable of doing. Somebody died in a horrible way, you know. And none of this is revealing the creature. It's just revealing elements of the story and elements of what it's capable of doing. And your imagination is given free rein to just ratchet up the fear level.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like horror movies are almost always a horror / something else, and it's the something else that kind of gives you the grounding for the horror to then, you know, pop. Cabin in the Woods is one of my favorite, and it's a comedy, but it manages to be both funny and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, humor has a real place in horror. You know, you sometimes need that to sort of defuse the situation. You know, there's a it goes up and it comes down. It goes up more, comes down. It goes up more, and you just keep climbing that hill.
Dark City is kind of a gothic horror, or maybe even sci-fi horror, though.
Yeah, I love that film.
Movie.
Oh, it's a great film. You know, so having, you know, it's kind of the whole thing about how there's Alien and Aliens, and one is a horror movie and the other is an action sci-fi movie. And it just, you know, the aura really makes all the difference in the world. I'm not a big fan. I mean, there are a lot of things that are called horror that are really just a bunch of jump scares and blood and guts. And that's not really my cup of tea. Most of the Saw franchise is kind of terrible as far as I'm concerned because that's just all it is. But the first one was really good, and people forget that. It's this very claustrophobic, psychological mystery.
Yeah.
Who's behind it all.
Yeah.
And that kind of claustrophobic, what if, what's happening, uncertainty is really what I think makes a really good horror story.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons Lovecraft was so great,
Yeah. Yeah. As a game master, I love the genre because it really helps me focus on the technique of telling the story itself. It's a rich medium for story.
Yeah, it's sorry, I'm trying to think. Trying to pay attention to all of the background paperwork here, and yeah, I think, again, with horror movies, there's a lot of like hack and slash and blood and guts, but I don't really consider that much different than, like, let's say a D&D. I mean, if you have monsters in a D&D game and it's just, who's going to kill who first, that to me is what most of what the movies that people call horror. Whereas Call of Cthulhu and Lovecraft, a lot of it is about not knowing what the monsters are. I mean, half the Lovecraft stories, you end not knowing if there is a monster or if the person is just completely insane.
It's easier to elicit shock or disgust, I think. Yeah, that's a cheap shot, and you can do that in horror games, and sometimes that's fun. Splatterpunk is a genre for a reason. The aspect of horror that I really don't like is the modern sort of Blumhouse thing, where they've figured out that horror films are cheap to make, but then they aim them at the teen market rather than giving it an R rating or a 15 or an 18 over here. So you end up with what might be an okay premise with a crap budget and aimed at teenagers, so it never really fully commits to the bit. And I really hate those. Those are the ones I hate. I'd rather another Saw than that kind of.
Yeah.
I will say the really cheap horror movies that don't take themselves seriously and are just funny, those I do kind of enjoy in just a terrible B movie kind of way. What was the one that everyone was talking about for a while? The Velocipaster.
Oh God.
Is just fun. It's just funny. It's a parody of a horror movie. They even make jokes about, how cheap it was to make, basically. The Velociraptor, it's about a priest that turns into a Velociraptor and kills people. So he decides he's only going to kill bad people. And his costume is literally like an obviously cheap plastic, like, dinosaur costume like you get for Halloween.
Gosh.
And it's hysterical. There was a television show for a while I really loved, called Stan Against Evil.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
And there's one where, they did things like they have Stan sitting on the porch in this supposedly, 1970s or 1980s setting, and a modern day cop car drives by in the background. And it's one of those shows where you don't know if they just didn't catch it in editing, or if they caught it in editing and said, yeah, we don't care, or if they did it on purpose, because they might have.
Yeah. Tucker and Dale versus Evil is another good example. Also, Army of Darkness.
I liked Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. That was fun.
Oh yeah. That is a good one. That's a series, right?
Series, and then there's a sort of animatic film that they did as well that kind of finishes off all the dangling plot threads after they got cancelled. So,
Yeah, I enjoyed that one as well.
yeah,
I'm
just-
currently working on a video on the history of zombie movies, but after that, I'm going to sit down and watch all of the Evil Bong movies
Oh God.
because there are like between that and like the Evil Gingerbread Man, which is part of the same series. There's like 12 movies. I'm like,
stop.
we'll just see how long until my brain melts completely.
So
It's
I
always
guess I'm
been-
the only one here who doesn't watch horror movies. Huh?
I
It's always
mean,
been hard
it's
to get the Lovecraft stuff on film though, and to make it work. Someone mentioned The Color Out of Space, which was a recent one that I thought was a decent
Yeah.
effort. But
It is I mean, part of the problem though is that, Lovecraft's genius was the fact that your brain is always scarier than anything he could write down or anything that you could put on film. Or at least when
Yeah.
people were creative, that was the case.
Yeah.
Um,
If you've
Del
ever
Toro's-
actually, if you've read
Sorry,
his short stories, also his language is absolutely unique. A lot could be
Yeah.
said about his writing style, but it's
Yeah.
utterly unique.
I was going to say Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities had a couple of Lovecraft themed stories, and those were
Yeah,
done pretty well.
yeah, those are good too.
yeah,
I do have
it's.
to
Sorry, go
do
ahead.
have to- I do have to admit that cosmic horror does fascinate me. I do not usually read the books or watch the movies, but I do like to look at the lore, and it fascinates me as somebody who wants to understand and know as much as possible about the world. That cosmic horror is something that just refuses to be able to be grasped. There's just something fascinating about it, even though I might not want to directly encounter the horror element of it by watching the movies and reading the books.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you've ever had that moment of really deeply considering something along those lines, and it gave you the chills, then you can kind of you can see how it would have some appeal.
I have played some horror tabletop RPGs, even ran a few games myself. But yeah, it's not my expertise. Maybe I should just be quiet.
I mean, it's one of those things. Like some people really like it, and that's kind of why I was saying that depending on what you're running, you can, like I said, Numenera can have no horror in it at all. It's really not even designed to be horror, but you can there's a very kind of fuzzy line between are you just fighting monsters in a straight on fashion, or is there a mystery behind it?
Yeah.
And where it crosses from mystery to horror is completely up to the GM and the players.
Mhm.
It's a gradient. Horror is a gradient, not an absolute.
Yeah.
And you were talking about mixing genres. With all these dark fantasy games, people are bringing horror techniques and ideas into fantasy. Can't remember who said it, but someone said that a dungeon crawl should basically be like tunnel rats in Vietnam. Around every corner there's a poo smeared sharp stick, or someone dropping down out of a hatch behind you and stabbing you in the back. It should be traumatic and horrible.
Or it can. I mean, like
Or
I
it
said,
could-
I know.
it could be.
Like I said, I know people that run Call of Cthulhu fairly light and fluffy and almost comedic. So, tune Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just laugh at it, that's one way of going mad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of TTRPGs in general, is that you can flavor them however you want. You can mix elements. You can do mashups. You can do whatever you want. It's a creative hobby.
I run almost exclusively horror, and I think my players laugh more than any other role-playing game because, like they have to. Like that's how you kind of stave off, those feelings of having to run to your car. Like they just sort of laugh off when they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so the result is that they remember it as the game that made them laugh, like while they were peeing themselves.
Somebody asked me the other day, like, how is it that I could, like, I don't I ever get bored playing characters that I know are going to go insane or die? And I said, well, you know what though, it's those moments just before you're about to die, or as you're going insane or whatever. Those are the juiciest role play moments. Like those are where all the shenanigans really happen, and it's just fun, to wonder, like, how would this person react in a situation like this? What would it look like?
Well,
Yeah,
and
I
one of
do
the
have.
sorry,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
do have to agree with that. Even though I prefer to play as heroes and so on, I did play Tales of Elsewhere, which is an action horror game. Uh, Wild West, post-apocalyptic, steampunky a bit, and the most the best scene was when my character died being eaten by zombies, just pulling out the last stick of dynamite. You're going to hell with me.
Absolutely, it's
The
all
rule
about
of
those
cool.
moments.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's
rule of
about
cool.
those moments. Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
funny
I mean,
thing is,
I really miss kind of the older school gaming where like you struggled to get anywhere in the game, and it was an absolute like celebration if you hit level 5. And you really felt it when something actually happened to your character and they died. I mean, I know people that played the same characters in Top Secret for 10 years, and there was like actual mourning when they died. It really meant something. And I kind of miss those, which is why I really like exploring these games that people don't know as well, because so much of modern D&D 5e is about, everyone wants to be the main character and they're not really, you know, it's just a story. Nobody's really taking it seriously. Nobody ever dies. Nobody ever gets hurt. Nobody ever struggles. It's just like them being the main character. So,
yeah, I totally agree. Even in a game like D&D, death needs to be on the table. There needs to be a chance. And that's also why in my game, I purposefully made everybody more vulnerable. So if you get hit by a very lucky crit that rolls high, you can get one shot, right? The players are supposed to approach combat tactical and carefully. And otherwise, where's the spice, right?
Yep.
Are you a hero if you cannot fail?
that's a great line. That's a great line. That should be a t-shirt. Okay, it is about 10 of. I want to make sure everybody has time to plug their stuff. So if everyone wants to, Eraserhead is going to throw the links back up. If everyone wants to talk about any project they have upcoming, or things they have on their YouTube channel or whatever. Blaze?
Big patch is coming up. Probably it will probably be published at the end of the month. 40 new sub archetypes. It's going to be huge, the biggest patch ever. Really looking forward to it. Have been working a lot to make it possible to make it possible. And I mean, I occasionally do. If you want, there is the next Ishanako Arena planned. I haven't published yet, but it will be. I need to open up my calendar. I should have been ready. Sorry. Yes, 13th of April. If anybody wants to try out the game, it gets live streamed. It will be fun. The theme will be superheroes. So you don't have to play as a superhero. You can play as whatever you want. So, yeah, I think
Okay.
those are enough plugs from my side.
All right. Grim, what do you got coming up?
Still working on my mostly historical samurai game, which is called Ronin. So yeah, it's going to be in 3 books. You can either play it as a straightforward, fairly historical game, or you can start bringing in monsters and magic, and then the 3rd book is for playing it solo. So not sure when that's going to come up. That's going to be after the crowdfunder for the Machinations campaign, because we're trying out a bunch of things when we do that, which will then be used to power raising money for run-in. I have a solo game called Off Road, which is a sort of surreal travelogue, sort of solo journaling game. Don't know when that will come out. I'm doing some freelancing. My YouTube channel is currently doing Roll for Insight, which is where I answer questions about games, the gaming industry, GM advice, that sort of thing. So if you want to pop over to Postmortem Video on YouTube and leave some comments under any of the recent videos, questions or anything, any advice you might want from someone who's been in the industry for a quarter of a century and is very, very old, then maybe I can give you some advice and so on there. You can find me on social media, Patreon and things, usually as either Grimachu or Grimasaur, depending on your Pokemon preference.
Okay. And Dr. Noodle, do you have anything coming up? Any social media you'd like to plug?
If you'd like to watch some live games of Delta Green, Call of Cthulhu, some other games like Mothership and Sad Robots and stuff, come over to the Into the Darkness webpage on YouTube. They're also available on your favorite podcasts. And come and watch me and some other people play and run Delta Green, Call of Cthulhu, and some others.
Okay.
Come join us and play.
Where do we find that on YouTube? I don't think I had a link for that.
I will get you a link. Just give me one moment.
Sweet. And I will make sure that goes in the description as well. Tap, 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 tap.
Oh, sorry. Let me just...
That's all right. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. What I can talk about funny sub archetypes from my system.
I want to take a quick minute and we had a couple of people popping in late. Grizzled Entertainment and File 13. I just want to say a quick hello to them. File 13 will also be on the show coming up reasonably soon.
Oh.
So I think, Grizzle, do you have a YouTube channel? I don't remember. I know File 13 does. Ah, here we go.
I popped it in the comments for you.
Ta-da! Eraserhead slacking. Oh, there it goes. He found it right after you did, after you put it in.
Thank you for the effort.
It's all right. He's trying to do like 6 different people's links. So, okay. Well, I want to thank everyone in the chat. This has been absolutely awesome. If you have not hit the like button and you've had any fun at all, whether you like pineapple or not, I would really appreciate it if you would make sure that the like button gets hit. If you've not subscribed yet, we are now over 400. We're working towards the 500. So if you haven't subscribed yet, I would really enjoy that as well. I want to thank you very much to my panel. You've all been fabulous. Grim, welcome back. And Dr. Noodle and Blaze, it was really good to have you here for the first time.
Thank you for having us.
Those were
It was
wonderful.
a delight being here.
Yes, especially poor Blaze. It's like what, like 1 o'clock in the morning now or something for you.
Yeah, I'm going to bed after this.
Imagine that. So I am the Eclectic Goat. You can find me on Discord, Twitter, and here under that same name. I do a whole variety of things. I like to make sure that underappreciated games, books, television shows, authors all get a little bit of notice. The first Monday of every month, I do indie author interviews. The second and fourth, I do shows you've never seen, where I sit down with a bunch of people that have never seen a really cool television show and I force them to watch it. And every Wednesday, I am here on Slice and Dice from 6 to 8 Eastern Standard Time. I am currently working on some collaborations with other YouTubers. Hopefully, I'll get more of those in. And I am working on a video on the history of zombie movies, which I hope to have out in time for the release of 28 Years. I think that is currently everything I'm doing here, which seems very strange considering I had 2 weeks where I was much more right out straight. But yes, Rio, thank you very much. It was a nice stream. I had a really good time. So again, thank you to everyone, and I hope to see you on Monday for shows you've never seen. Happy headbutting.
Bye.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it, or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. We're the guys for you, we've got time for you. Come and join the crew, here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. Us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.